right, thank you everyone for coming. As a lot of you will know, I'm Alex. I study Roman archaeology. I've been involved with quite a few different archaeology projects all across Europe, from Greece, Italy and Britain. And this is a chance for me to introduce to you some of the things that I absolutely love about the Roman world and that I'm studying right now. So I want you to all think back 2,000 years ago tonight. We're going to have a look at what people looked like here in Britain in the Roman times. But before we do that, I want us to all think about jewellery on a more anthropological basis, more generally. So let's start with Her Majesty the Queen. She wears jewellery to show wealth and status. She has the ability to access diamonds and jewels that we can only dream of. And this is something that was definitely true in the ancient world as well. This lady here, it's a reconstruction of a burial. She's in the British Museum, but was originally from modern-day Iraq or Mesopotamia. And she is completely bedecked in what at the time would have been very expensive jewels. Now, this again is showing that she's got status, and in the grave there's evidence that she herself was a kind of queen. So, first thing we know about jewellery, it can show that you're wealthy, but it can do so much more than that. And it's also applicable to men, but it can do so much more than just show wealth. Here's more examples of royals who wear jewellery, but for very different reasons than wearing diamonds and just pure metal. On the right, we've got Prince Charles, who is sporting a signet ring or a chevalier. This is a piece of jewellery that's often given through families. This probably belonged to someone in his family as well. And it's engraved, although we can't see it, with his heraldic House of Windsor logo. Now, this is a very big piece with a lot of history, in that it comes through the family and would have been used to show his identity. But nowadays it has become a much more different symbol. It's sort of more associated with hooray Henrys and posh boys. And it doesn't really matter what insignia you have on it. In fact, I know people who have got blank ones. On the left, we've got a different case. The ring that the Duchess of Cambridge is wearing is, again, very expensive and has a Ceylon diamond in the middle. Now, this is about the meanings that different stones can have in jewellery. A Ceylon diamond has always been associated with royalty, but it's also associated with loyalty. It shows that between them there will be a strong and stable marriage, hopefully. But the ring also has another layer. This was the ring that Charles gave to Diana, and by William giving the ring to Catherine, he is showing that he expects her, that Diana would have been proud of her, and that Diana, effectively beyond the grave, is giving her a blessing. And this is certainly how it was picked up in the British press at the time. So we've got jewellery showing wealth, absolutely, expensive rings. We've got jewellery displaying status and family, and we've also got jewellery having a story and connecting people within stories. And jewellery can do far more than that. These are 3 adverts from De Beers for engagement rings. Remember, and gentlemen, this is all for you, remember, her friends are silently judging you. She already knows you love her, now everyone else will too. If you're a frog, turn yourself into a prince. Jewellery is so much more than about the diamond, than about the gold. It's about all the things that people see when they look at it, and about what the person will think about themselves. A lady might, for example, consider herself a princess with the right diamond. Other kinds of jewellery. From the left, we've got a Hamza hand. This is popular in North Africa and the Middle East and is known as a symbol against bad luck. And this is sort of how these others work as well. An ankh, which is a very ancient Egyptian symbol. A horn, which is very popular in Italy as a good luck charm. This is a Saint Christopher, which is given to believers if they're going on long journeys. And of course, a cross, which can have protective capacities as well as displaying that you are a Christian. So what can we get from jewellery then in the ancient world? And this is where it becomes really important for me. A lot of social anthropologists have said that in societies where we don't have any literature, we don't have any writing, we can access the social world of people through the jewellery that they have left behind. So right, with that in mind, let us turn back to Roman Britain. So 2,000 years ago, in Kent, the Romans invaded Britain. They came with their triremes and invaded, raped, pillaged, you name it. and they stayed here for 400 years. Now, by the time they had come here, they had already established themselves not only as a military power across Europe, but also as a cultural one. Just as we have Western culture today, the ancient world had Roman culture. And this was a diverse, hybridized culture that had picked up elements from different places the Romans had been, such as the Middle East, the Near East, and Greece, which they saw as sort of being the epitome of culture. What did they leave us in Britain that we can see? Lots of things that we see all over the empire. And this is what we call as archaeologists material culture. So they've left us ceramics and oil lamps that we have the same examples of all over Europe. Bracelets, jewellery, again, that we have examples of the same things all over Europe. And cities. Cities unite us. If you look at most modern cities in Europe, they are built on Roman foundations, which are all gridded. This is Roman London, or a copy of, which without the Romans simply would not exist. So we have a lot to owe the Romans for, as Monty Python would posit. But Britain existed before the Romans came. And this is where it gets tricky. The Romans wrote about everything that they did. The people who lived here before did not. And that we will get to later. But meanwhile, I want to talk to you about Roman jewellery, which I absolutely love. So the Romans not only wrote about what they did, they painted what they did. And here we have a lady from Egypt who is very Roman. She's wearing a Roman dress and she's wearing Roman jewellery. She's wearing pearls on her ears, very expensive things. And she's wearing a necklace, which in the middle, you probably can't make it out, but it's a very well-known type of jewellery, which is a Medusa. Now, in mythology, Medusa was supposed to be able to turn men and animals into stone just by looking at them. And on jewellery, she becomes an incredibly potent symbol against the evil eye and against ill wishes. Wearing a Medusa means that you're scaring bad luck away. This thing here is slightly strange. It's a club of Hercules. Again, very connected with mythology. You can see from the way it's been nobbled that it's meant to represent a tree trunk. And this is automatically, in mythology, associated with Hercules, who carried one as his emblem. These would have been worn by women. So what does it mean when a woman wears an incredibly masculine symbol? And it connects with myth. In one myth, Hercules is so enamored with a queen from the Middle East that he gives her his club as a trophy, telling her that she has won him over. If you're a woman then, and you put on these clubs, you're effectively telling everyone around you that you have a man under your thumb. And he's not just any man, he's a very powerful man. Not necessarily Hercules himself, but someone who is dressing up as Hercules in this sort of game. The next piece is as cute as it is almost unfathomable. It's a tiny intaglio, so something that would have fitted on a ring. And it bears Cupid, so a young boy with wings, who is holding a torch to a butterfly. What does this mean? It's all in the ancient Greek. Cupid, or eros in ancient Greek, means desire. And the butterfly is connected with the word for soul, psyche. Holding a torch over a butterfly is a sort of literal representation of desire burning the soul. We can imagine a piece like this would have been given to someone as a representation for love. You, darling, are setting my soul on fire. Here's a gift for you. And then finally, we have something that is still actually quite popular today, the hand-clasping ring. This is something that started in Greece, but was made popular by the Romans and spread all over. It says here, omonia, and this is about harmony and marriage. So we've got very different kinds of Roman jewellery, but what unites them is that you can expect to see them all over the Roman Empire. And there's one more piece I want to talk about, and that's snake rings, snake jewellery. I should have trigger warnings for the skeleton, but I hope you all don't mind. This lady, sadly, did not make it through the 79 AD eruption of Vesuvius, and she took with her 2 precious rings and a purse, which has not survived, full of jewellery, of which included the 2 snake bangles. Now, we know snakes as fairly frightening, fairly strange, sometimes even lethal beings. But for the Romans, they had a very different meaning. Snakes were associated with the god of healing. Wrapping a snake around your body, real or fake, was associated with healing. And at some shrines in Greece, you were supposed to lie down and let the snakes cover you in order to get yourself healed. So all of the jewellery that I've shown you is very much connected with the myths and all sorts of other things. But we have some jewellery as well that we only know the meanings of because of literature. This is a lunula, or a half moon, which we know was worn by little girls and is a sign of Diana and very protective. Trigger warning for willies. This is something that we know was very much worn by little boys. It's giving them the masculinity that they have not yet entirely got. On the one hand, we've got, well, a phallus, and then this is the Enfico sign, which I gather in a lot of communities is very rude, so I won't replicate it, but it's supposed to represent the coitus. This is a symbol that actually was fairly innocuous in Roman times. It was used absolutely everywhere. Cities were plastered with them, and even houses. Believe it or not, this is actually a Roman wind chime that would have been put outside people's houses to ward off bad luck. And I love this game, Count the Phalluses. I'll let you think on that for a minute. So if Roman jewellery is so intensely identifiable, we certainly know what we must be expecting when we think about Roman Britain. And actually, sometimes that comes true. This here is a hoard that was found in Norfolk, which is the county just north of here, well, a bit north of here. And it has some of the things that we've already seen. It has a gemstone with, you can't see him, but Cupid is there. More gemstones with Roman gods, a gemstone with a sign from the Roman zodiac, Hercules club earrings, which we spoke about earlier, and more connections with Roman jewellery in general. But this doesn't really give us any indication of what the people who were already here were wearing and what they were doing. This is sort of more an indication of what the elite classes were doing. And the elite classes, we know from Roman literature, were on the most part trying to sort of use Roman culture to show that they themselves were powerful. One Roman historian writes it as, by wearing the toga, going to the Roman baths and behaving as Romans, they were actually enslaving themselves in our culture. So what about people who we know for a fact didn't want to enslave themselves like this? This is from Total War. This is a representation of Boudicca, or Boudicca, who was one of the Romans' main opposition when they came into Britain. She burnt down a lot of their camps and almost made them leave, except that fundamentally they defeated her because they were stronger. I really like the way she is represented here. She is wearing woad, which we know for a fact Roman Britons would have worn by the time that the Romans came. But she's also wearing something a bit more special around her neck. This is a Celtic torque, which is some of the most famous pieces of pre-Roman art. And they come like this and this. The one here was found in Norfolk again and weighs 1 kilogram. So I know a lot of you go to the gym, imagine wearing 1 kilogram around your neck. That's quite a lot of gold. And these were meant to be worn by the most powerful in society, the wealthy men, the warrior men particularly. And you'll notice that the style and decoration is quite different from what we saw with the Roman jewellery. Yes, gold is the same, and clearly both cultures were master gold workers, but here we've got a very different, more abstract kind of iconography. There's very different games going on here. And this is where I'm going to bring you to the promised animal brooches, which are the things that I'm studying. These are found in Britain, pretty much all over Britain, because we have a fantastic metal detecting tradition. So we've got about 1,000 copies, and they come in loads of different forms, which I've tried to give you a flavour of here. Hounds, hares, cockerels, horses, panthers, lions, boars, you name it. And also objects, axes, flagons, knives, and sandals, which are the most popular of all the objects. They are found, again, different from Roman jewellery, all over the Western Roman Empire. So these are with people who would have before been the Celts. We're looking at Roman Gaul, Roman Germania, and Roman Britannia. But they're not found in the East, and that for me is critical. And finally, the brooch itself. These are reproductions made by my brother. They would have been used to clip together pieces of cloth. Now we know that Roman clothing was stitched, not joined together by brooches, whereas British clothing, and Gallic clothing for that matter, was very much joined together with brooches. So actually, brooches themselves are very, very rare in Italy and very rare in Greece. They are very much something that represents what people are wearing in Britain and Germany and France. And this is where they connect in with something that's a little bit weird. This is a timescale here, and Romans come around 43, so about there. And you can see that the finds of brooches explode in Roman periods. And this is because a lot of social anthropologists believe, and I personally believe this for my pieces, that jewellery is used when social identities are under threat. And people want to wear things more because they feel the need to show it more. By wearing more brooches, the people of Roman Britain were putting on display their identity against the incoming invaders. Now, I think this is where it's really nice that they're animals. Some people have considered that it doesn't really matter what the iconography is, it's about the brooch. But I'm wearing a Cambridge University one today, and while it's very innocuous in this group, because we all go to Cambridge, it doesn't really matter that I'm wearing a Cambridge brooch, because here we could all wear Cambridge brooches. If I went to, say, Aberdeen and stood wearing a Cambridge University brooch, that might seem very wrong, if not, well, awfully wrong. So are these brooches purely for decoration, or are they badges? Are they actually sending messages? And I think that we might be seeing something that sends far wider messages. Some scholars have deemed them to be immersive messages, not exclusive messages. Some have seen in the cockerel something that comes from the Roman god Mercury, as he's represented here with a ram and with a cockerel. And some have seen in the panther the god Bacchus, the god of wine and celebration and general drunkenness, who is often comes with a panther. But then loads of other animals do not fit into this pattern. And actually, these are not very popular animals compared to something like the duck, which we have absolutely no clue which god, if any, it can be connected to. And animals more generally are still worn today in society and absolutely do not connect with gods most of the time. People wear animals because of what they represent. And that can be, say, for a lion, bravery, or for a horse, speed, or being a champion, or because they feel connected with these animals in some way that we don't perhaps have access to. If we didn't have the press telling us that Kate Middleton's ring belonged to Diana and was bound up with loads of meanings, would we know, if we didn't know Princess Diana, that that ring had far more meaning than just being something rich and valuable? Not necessarily. So what am I doing to try and unpick these animal brooches? I am mapping them all across Britain. I'm looking very specifically at the British corpus of about 1,000. We've got two very different things they come from. The first is excavated contexts, where we have very good information about what sort of thing they were used for. So some are found on people's bodies in burials. Some have been found in votive wells where people have deposited them as an offering to the god. But other times they're just found by metal detectorists in the middle of nowhere, but often close to somewhere. And that's the thing that I think is important. So I think you can just about see that I've put villa, fort, temple, large settlement, small town, rural settlement, unknown. And by mapping them, I've tried to see where they come closer to. And while some people have said, well, obviously these must be military things, you can see that actually they're far more popular in occupational sites than they are anything else. Rural settlements are unlikely to have any Romans in. So this sort of shows that they're clearly not Roman objects as such. They're not associated too strongly with forts, and forts didn't just have Romans in. And they're not overly strong in larger settlements either, or in villas where very rich Romans or Roman emulators would have been. So one of the big questions I'm trying to sort out, as well as what these brooches are, is what can we do with a large body of metal detected objects? Now, different countries all over the world have very strict laws about metal detecting. Italy don't let you do it. France do not let you do it. It's only here in the UK and in Holland that we're allowed to go out, if you have the landowner's permission, and metal detect. And this is because we believe that in the UK that there's something to be gained from these objects that have been metal detected. However, it can be quite difficult to see in the cases of my brooches why. So I'm trying to show that actually we can do stuff with this. The scheme that records and keeps these data that so many metal detectorists subscribe to is doing something. So it has a political message as well as like a historical one. So I'm on my last slide. If you want to see some of this jewellery in the flesh, pop on down to the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, which is just on the corner of the Downing site, and have a look on the first floor cabinet, and you'll see some of the pieces that we've been talking about today, from the cockerel brooches to a fish brooch to Roman gemstones, set or not set, with gods and goddesses, and some slightly kookier things. And I hope that I've given you tools with which you can think about these objects, whether you think about them in connection to modern jewellery or you think about the connections they have with myths and the ancient world. Thank you very much for listening.